Why dig food? Why should the world care about a gentle, unassuming artist who lives in the Black Hills in South Dakota? I'm Andrew Harvey. I travel all around the world, speaking about the great passion of my life, sacred activism. I met Dick on one of my speaking tours, and immediately we had a tremendous bond. We found that we shared many things. We're in a terrible moment in the world's history in which everything depends upon turning around our relationship to the outside world. The world is now being destroyed by our greed and our exploitation of nature. And it came very obvious to me that it was essential to convey something of the spirit of this remarkable man who has lived such a complete life, who has such a deep attunement to the world around him, who cares so much for it, and who is, in my opinion, a great sacred activist, someone who combines a profound spiritual consciousness with a whole variety of action, creative and activist. And then I met his paintings, which completely and absolutely astonished me by their passion and sublimity. I felt that I was meeting the embodied spirit of the canyon, the old man of Spearfish Canyon. Your early passion for the Black Hills, for Spearfish Canyon, your childhood.
I acquired a love for the hills probably from my folks. They early on became acquainted with the Black Hills, and that's when I acquired a habit of the Black Hills. At that age, I couldn't have articulated why I liked the hills so much, but I did. And I'm still at a loss to fully articulate what the hills mean to me. I just know that they mean a lot. There's a magic about Spearfish Canyon that I sensed from the beginning. After crossing the dry plains to enter the cool confines of Spearfish Canyon with a wonderful smell of balm of Gilead and pine, and then to hear the olive-back thrush with its resonant, beautiful song. Those are essential images that registered early with me and still have meaning.
I would like to ask you about the war years.
I served in the Second World War in the European Theater of Operations, which placed me in England, France, Holland, Belgium, and Germany. We went into action just as the Battle of the Bulge started. We listened to German radio transmission. My job was to take the German codes which had been written down by our radio operators and see if I could make any sense out of them. We succeeded enough that we earned our keep, put it that way. So it was a very meaningful experience, but not something I ended up applying to my career.
I think there is some kind of relationship between breaking codes and painting.
Well, that's an interesting question, which it amuses me a little bit, but I see a relevance to it because there are times in code breaking when really you're, what could I say, making it up as you go along, guessing.
Right.
You're using your intuition. Actually, that's fairly important in code breaking. It isn't just a purely logical exercise. And I remember this one message I broke where I knew what it was all about right away.
Wow.
And it turned out I was right. And yet it was a fairly intricate code. But I had a sense of it, of what it was, even before I had really gotten down to breaking it. And that's a little like what happens with painting.
Dick, it's almost wine time, and I know how strong your wine is because when I first came to visit you, we got very high and enjoyed ourselves tremendously. What kind of wine is it, and how long have you been winemaking?
It's been a long time. And choke cherry wine is only one of the many wines that I have tried to make.
Enough talk, let's go and have a glass of wine.
I think that's a really good suggestion.
This is the alchemist magical
this is
crucible.
This
Come.
is the place.
Yes. This is where it all happens. Oh my goodness.
So here's just what I think we're looking for. Isn't that a lovely color?
Lovely color. And so many colors in it. It's like the red of alchemy. You know, the last stage of alchemy is the deep golden red. God bless you.
It's an emanation. It's a sort of a distillation of the hills, just as you said it.
So let's
great.
let's just tip again. God bless you.
Ah.
After the war, you came to teach in Chicago.
Yes.
And I live in Chicago, so I have a particular passion for Chicago.
I very quickly fell in love with the place. When I was first there, as a matter of fact, I lived just on Elm Street, just off of Rush Street, the entertainment street of Chicago. I took my sketchbook on weekends to the nightclub, and I have a whole series of paintings based on these sketches.
And the whole of life is there. You see sexy women, you see criminals in Chicago. There's always a smattering of the mafia.
You bet. Yeah, they're not necessarily a bunch of admirable people. And I don't always, even if they are admirable, I don't always flatter them. So, in fact, I may distort, sometimes a little cruelly, I suspect. I sometimes will have them adopt poses that are a little extreme. But that's a privilege you have as an artist. And it was a good period, and a very fruitful period for me.
There are a lot of bunnies in your paintings, aren't there? There are a lot of Playboy bunnies in your paintings.
Yes, I got acquainted with two lovely young women who, one of them was a student in my class, who was a straight-A student, and I got acquainted with her later and then discovered she was a Playboy bunny. And she had a good friend who was named Michelle, who was also a Playboy bunny, and neither one of them have ever seen my paintings.
Michelle you grew very close to, didn't you? Michelle was a profound relationship in your life. Why did you focus so much on her?
Well, she is very attractive, and as a matter of fact, I was attracted to her.
It's adoration, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's much more adoration.
Yes.
But there's
yes.
a deep feeling of the whole
Yeah.
being
I
of the
have
painter
a
towards her.
great respect for this young woman.
Clearly she moved you a lot
Yes,
as
she
a
did.
person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know whether I should tell this story or not, but she spent an afternoon with me one time, at a time after I had indicated to her that I was personally interested in her. And we were looking at property in Chicago, and we had looked at some very attractive properties that there's no question I should have jumped on them. I should own a nice property in Chicago. And she got disgusted with me, I think legitimately, and finally said at the end of the afternoon, you know, Dick, if I had to spend a lot of time with you, I'd need to smoke pot. And I thought that was a very friendly thing for her to say. That's a good way of telling me, get lost, brother. Well, let's go see some paintings.
Look at this!
My friends have arranged them out here because it's the only place where we can show them. But it's appropriate to have them in the midst of nature.
Oh my God, yes, they belong to nature. Dick, this painting to me represents a shift from the personal world of Chicago to the archetypal world of the Black Hills. So what's going on in this?
I've sometimes been called an eclectic because I use different styles. You can see the transition as you go downward. The figure diminishes in health as it becomes more and more surrounded by what I would call human constructs.
Yes.
These black and white squares and rectangles.
Could you dive into these landscapes with us?
Well, these three paintings do represent different views in Spearfish Canyon, different moods in the canyon, cool colors around the periphery, and then the warm, bright colors in the center.
This one to me is a masterpiece because although the lighting is obvious, it's also, the light is appearing from within as well. It's as if the light is shining through the landscape. And in the two figures, you have something very subtle, I think. On the one hand, the trout fisher, and on the other hand, the contemplative woman. And yet there's a subtle play between them, as if he's trying to catch her gaze, but she's turning away to be immersed even more deeply in the peace and the radiance of the landscape. Dick, let's go to the third painting. It's a faithful rendition, but it's a visionary rendition. You have completely transformed the light and the colors to reflect some secret inner rapture that you feel.
Well, this is a painting that needs some explanation, there's no question about it. It is an actual Black Hills scene, painted from a setting over northwest of Deadwood. The Black Hills have been described as an island in an ocean of plains. And so I use that background, but the picture actually makes a kind of friendly, I would hope, comment on a great painting by the French painter Poussin, which depicted St. John on Patmos.
Yes.
Patmos is an island in the Aegean Sea near Greece. And St. John visited there, and while he was there, he had a visitation from an angel. As has been pointed out, the St. John looks a little like a not very prosperous old prospector with hairy arms and legs. And he is visualizing, you can see his eyes closed. And then, of course, the angel there. And one reason she sort of lacks substance is that, well, she is a figment of his dreaming. It's a visitation that's transcendent. And so she doesn't cast a shadow. And she seems sort of flat and not part of the setting, which is, of course, appropriate.
Well, I love her being in a kind of 1950s cocktail dress. I think that is one of the smartest things you've ever done.
That kind of brings her up to date.
Yes. And I love, too, the blossoms in the front, as if his thoughts, his visionary thoughts, are creating these golden blossoms all around him. Dick, you've talked a lot about your love of cross-country skiing, and here it is.
We call it a surrealistic fantasy, a
Well,
dream.
it's also taking place in moonlight, isn't it?
Yes.
And you love to ski at moonlight, don't
Yes,
you?
yeah. And you know it's moonlight even though you don't see the moon because
Yes.
of those round shadows
Yes.
underneath all the trees.
Yes.
But it's got its surrealist dream dimension
Very much.
in that you have a rower trying to row in the snow,
Yes.
which I don't think I've ever seen even at midnight.
Yes.
And it has a flying saucer, a UFO, up there in the corner that seems to be present with some
And what's
Black
in
Hill
it?
flowers.
What's in? Ah, the Black Hill flowers.
Oh
are there?
yes, of
Oh
course.
yes.
They're not aliens.
No. And you have.
Rower trying to row in the snow,
Yes.
which I don't think I've ever seen even at midnight.
Yes.
And it has a flying saucer, a UFO, up there in the corner that seems to be present with some
And what's
Black
in
Hill
it?
flowers.
What's in? Ah, the Black Hill flowers.
Oh
are there?
yes, of
Oh
course.
yes.
They're not aliens.
No. And you have a rabbit on the right, and you have a white owl in the tree here.
Yes.
Why did you put those two?
Well, it just seemed to be that natural creatures should be participating in this dream. And you have a snowshoe rabbit and a white owl, which are appropriate for the snow. And so they're looking on, I think with whether with approval or not, one doesn't know, but they are watching.
Well, let me propose an interpretation of this painting.
Okay, good.
That it's a dream, and the father and the mother are there. The father is the purple
good.
father, and there's the mother. And you are the person rowing the boat, and it's solitary and...
I like your reference to those two hills as father and mother symbols.
Yes.
I never had thought of that.
So the complete vision, the transcendent father and the embodied mother, and they've been looking after you all this time, and there you have been, in some ways rowing in the snow, but the rescue party is coming and the animals are rejoicing, and above, just to signify the full lunacy of it, the Black Hill flowers are dancing in a UFO.
Oh,
I love
great. That's a great interpretation. And I am not going to argue with it.
So, Dick, tell me about why you love cross-country skiing so much. What's the attraction?
The cross-country skiing involves rhythm, involving not just your legs, but your whole body. So there is a sense in which you're dancing through nature.
Yes.
Very much in harmony with nature.
Yes.
And there's a pleasure in this, there just is. It's very, very different from, say, downhill skiing. In downhill skiing, the pleasure partly is in a kind of conquest of the snow. And in cross-country skiing, you don't do that. It's too much for you.
Yeah.
What you have to do is adapt to whatever its nature is. And that's, I think, a healthy attitude toward nature.
Some of your friends have told me that they feel that almost your greatest achievement and your greatest legacy is in what you've made possible in the Eagle Cliffs trails.
Well, thanks. I think that exaggerates my importance somewhat, but I have been instrumental in the development of, I think, one of the best cross-country ski facilities in the country. And that is the Eagle Cliff cross-country ski area. It has a wonderful variety of trails, wonderful variety of scenery, and it can be at any level. There are trails that are good for beginners to start out on, but there are also trails that are going to be a real assignment to even the expert skiers.
Well, it seems to me that so much of your art has come out of that dancing with nature in harmony.
I like
that
that
this sport
analogy.
is this sport that you love so is the same reflection of that, isn't it?
That's a good analogy. I like that.
You've really, really experienced the depths of painting. You've poured yourself out as a composer. You've taught the humanities. But the thing that I respect you most for is your environmental activism.
Well, we had a very specific danger to Spearfish Canyon. This actually was after we had gotten a watershed designated fish and meat.
You are as passionate about this as you have ever been, and you are as willing to go and testify as you have ever been.
Spearfish Canyon area is not the proper place for a mine in this county. If you approve this permit, you are gambling. You are gambling at very poor odds with a precious and unreplaceable resource.
Your passion for Spearfish Canyon and the Black Hills hasn't just remained a selfish passion, a narcissistic passion. You have for years and years and years fought for the preservation of this land and of the pristine qualities of South Dakota. What made you take up your environmental work?
I think that my sense of the Black Hills that I respect so much being violated is a dimension of that. And by being violated, that's a vague way of putting it. But the strip mines, for instance, the other forms of development that we've opposed, and of course the push to make South Dakota the dumping place for the nation's garbage. These are affronts to not just the environment, they're an affront to sensibility and to the beauties that really are manifest out here. And so I guess it's to go from my love of the Black Hills and my creative activity to being an environmental activist doesn't seem like a big leap to me. Human history is in the balance right now. Man's relation with nature is all askew, and we haven't taken the measures to correct that. And the consequences of that could be horrendous. And I don't see those consequences as being prevented yet. So I'm not optimistic.
I want to ask you one more question.
Okay.
And this is a difficult question. I want to ask you what God is for you.
Well, no, that is a sticker. I have difficulties with practically all religions. Is there a God? I don't know. And yet I am convinced there is a transcendent order. I think there's something that's transcendent. I think it's here in the hills. I just sense that. But I can't give it the name of God. I don't know what it is. I'm looking forward to finding out.
How do you summarize such a rich life? I'd like to paraphrase John Wesley. Do all you can with what you have, in the time you have, in the place you are. That's Dick Ford.